What is up, you guys? How is it going tonight? Thank you again for joining me for another BG Cast Wednesday live podcast. So, starting about 10 minutes early tonight, a couple things I want to talk about, a couple things I want to air out. First thing I want to talk about, though, is a great thing. It's a good thing. I was on Karen Holton's Quantum Guide show this afternoon. It was a fantastic time, really amazing conversation, really amazing questions, and really amazing individual Miss Karen Holton is. If you guys have not checked out Karen, I highly recommend you do. She is on my network, Forbidden Knowledge Network, www.forbiddenknowledge.news. She's got a couple of different shows she does. She does Angels and Aliens and Quantum Guides. Really cool person. It's really nice to see an OG like that. Really holding it down with the spiritual vibe that she had and the consciousness that she was putting forth into this world. I was really grateful for that. So, all right. The main thing I want to address before we get into our topic, because I've got an excellent topic for us tonight. It's something I've been kind of waiting to dive into for a long time, is apparently some people have it out to get me. Yes, I am just as surprised as you are. I really don't understand and I'm super confused. But all I'm going to say is I guess it is just the most far beyond reached idea that somebody comes on and does this, tries to be their authentic self, tries to lead by example in what they think should be a message delivered and how they should act and how they should carry themselves in life to a high degree of integrity and class. I guess that's just so out of the fucking question in this community today. I guess that's just the most far beyond reached idea. And maybe, in a lot of ways, this collective could potentially be so fucked up, they think being fucked up is leading by example. So I'm just going to leave it at that with that one. That is what I do. Okay. I come on here and I lead by example. I be the individual in the change that I wish to see in this world. And I guess to some people in the spiritual community and the conspiracy community, that's just a completely fucking absurd idea to be your authentic self and to lead by example and to try. So here's the thing, guys. Okay. When we're talking about getting people introduced to this subject matter, okay, and trying to get them interested and trying to ignite that divine fucking spark, being a piece of shit does not work. Okay. And that's just something I'm going to lay down when it comes to that. Yeah. I'm on my shows. I'm sober during my shows. I try to conduct myself in a good manner during my shows because I want to be taken seriously. I want people who are trying to ignite the divine spark within themselves to have an outlet of information where they're not being fucking chastised. Okay. So I'm sorry to some people that is the most fucking absurd idea to them. It's beyond me. I don't know. Like I said, maybe this collective needs so much fucking healing that potentially they're so fucked up in the heads that they think fucked up individuals being fucked up on the internet, on live stream, trying to deliver a message is the way to fucking do it. I guess so. Something else I want to clarify, okay, is I am an omnist, okay? I do not partake or prescribe to any one spiritual guideline. Yes, I have spiritual training that falls into the Sikh origins, the Taoist origins. There are different spiritual philosophies that I hold closer to me than I do others. And I will not debate that, and I will not. And if you just watched my show, instead of making a lot of these interesting comments, all right, you would see that I've mentioned that quite a few times. I am an omnist. I do not think the truth is found in any single one religion. I believe the truth, little bits of the truth can be found in them all. I do believe there is a underlying truth that exists, and that's where I am. Okay. I am trying to get to the root. I'm not trying to get through this dressed up version. I'm not trying to get through that dressed up version. I'm not trying to get through the fanatical version. I've gone through all of those. And I'm not saying that there isn't any truth in them. There most certainly is. But I see something beyond this. Okay. I see something beyond what's in books and on paper. So that is why I'm going to clarify that. I am an omnist. All right. The other thing, too, apparently a lot of people think I'm stealing ideas, especially people who continuously talk to themselves on X, and they'll make a tweet and then reply to themselves 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 again. Yeah, apparently I'm stealing ideas, according to these individuals. So if you think I've stolen any of your ideas at all, feel free to comment below and let me know if I'm stealing your ideas. All I've ever tried to do, okay, is bring to the table subject matter and topic matter that we all can learn together. That's pretty much it. I never once claimed to know anything. I've always said continuously, I am just in the same boat as the rest of you. Okay. I know just as much as you. I have my ideas. I have my theories, my speculations, all of those things. I have that. Okay. But I don't know more than the rest of you. And that's why I say BG Cast is for us to learn together. Okay. Because I'm learning with you guys. And the guys who have been with me throughout the 2 seasons and the people who've been with me, they say, like, damn, they even remember the shows. I'm like, damn, I just learned something. Okay, I am not better than anybody else. I am simply somebody who's standing the fuck up and taking the fucking initiative and actually putting things out there to deliver a message. That's what I'm doing. And I got people who just sit there and think talking to themselves on X all day is really helping change things. Okay, and it's like, dude, like, quit hating. This is literally what it is. Quit hating. All right. And it's like I've dealt with some interesting things since I started my show. Don't get me wrong. I've dealt with what I would call people who just need some more healing. They've done some interesting things, said some interesting things to me. I've dealt with people, being assholes to me because I try to deliver solutions instead of sitting here and bitching about the problem like 80% of these other fucking podcasters do. They just sit here and bitch and moan and bitch and moan. But here comes me. I'm trying to fucking sit here and deliver you solutions instead of sitting here and bitching and moaning. So maybe I've my whole life, okay, I've been used to this. People either really love me or they really don't. Okay. And I guess that stays a constituent when you enter the podcast world and the internet world. And one last thing I'm going to bring up, guys, I am married. Nobody's gotten inappropriate. Nobody's done anything interesting. And I thank you guys for that. But I am happily married. I love my wife. She's sitting upstairs with my 2 dogs right now. And she actually saved my life 2 years ago when an interesting incident happened. So I'm just bringing that to the table also, in case anybody gets the wrong idea. I'm a friendly guy. I like to talk and I like to communicate with people and I like to connect with people, but please honor and respect that. All right. Now that that is out of the way, let's get on to the show, guys. All right. Thanks for putting up with that. You guys have never seen me like that in the 2 seasons here on BG Cast. Yes, I'm a human too. I have feelings. I get pissed off. I'm not lying. All right. And I do. All right. I just know that that's not the way to go about things. I've grown up enough, all right, to understand that being angry and bitching and moaning about the problems at fucking hand, okay, it's not the way to go about things. All right. So that's why I choose to be the way that I am. Okay. I choose to bring solutions to you. I choose to bring learning to you. I don't chastise you for not knowing. I never once have. All right, guys. So just remember that before you want to open your mouth and you want to hate on me for trying to do something that I feel is right. We got a couple of comments here. Let's see. Yeah, light irritates demons. Lion, thanks so much, bro. I'm glad you're tuning in tonight, man. That's really cool to see you here. All right, guys. So nonetheless, let's thank you, Papal Black Nobility. I appreciate it. Yeah, nah, it's just it is what it is, man. But nonetheless, let's get to the show, guys. I got awesome stuff for you. All right. So I been really into this topic for a little bit, and I decided to make a show out of it. It came up last week in my show with the Smith effect. We talked about the Gnostic creation story, and it's a very interesting turn and a very interesting change compared to when we look at the canonical Christian Genesis story. I I would even say that this Gnostic creation myth does intertwine with the canonical Genesis story. It's like a more extended version, and I feel is a more, I guess you could say, closer to the truth version when we're talking about this. And I also feel that you guys are going to be a little bit surprised on who got Adam and Eve to eat from the tree in this version of the creation story. But nonetheless, let's kind of get right to it. Let's hop right into this bad boy. I think personally that we need to investigate this. We need to investigate these ulterior texts. I mean, you guys have seen me talk about this on multiple different shows. I mean, for Christ's sake, I have a three-part pre-Nicene rabbit hole series. Okay, and I'm really into this, and I was even talking about on Karen's show earlier on Quantum Guides. I was like, what about this stuff is just why are people okay, and a lot of the Christians so understanding of the fact that they've been lied to pretty much by governments, scientific institutions, the education system, and all of that, but they still clutch the King James Bible and they still clutch the New Universal Text, the two government sanctioned Bibles that have all of these things taken out of them. But nonetheless, let's get to it, guys. Let's dive right the hell in. The Gnostic creation myth. One of the things that set Gnosticism apart from the other varieties of early Christianity was its astonishing creation myth, an interpretation of the creation myth of Genesis that practically turns out that Old Testament text was upside down. Some people find the Gnostic creation myth to be merely bizarre. Others find it to be downright blasphemous. And I'm sure some people are going to find it downright, who are watching, are going to find it downright blasphemous. But all I can ask of you, okay, is to just approach this with an open mind. Okay, I'm not telling you what to believe. All right. Like I said in my post on X earlier, okay, you don't have to believe what I do. That doesn't make you evil. Actions dictate what evil is, not belief. All right. So let's get back to it. But whatever your opinion of the Gnostics creation myth ends up being, if you want to understand it on its own terms, it's necessary to be able to at least temporarily see it as the Gnostics themselves saw it, as a story that articulates and quite possibly even attempts to explain the human condition. Why is the world we live in so full of senseless suffering? What can we do to overcome that absurdity and misery and put our lives to meaningful use? Is this world where we really belong, or is the quiet despair that forms a constant background of our lives trying to tell us that we really belong somewhere else? And if so, where do we actually belong? So I'm going to just kind of stop there and paraphrase that for a second. A lot of us feel like we don't actually belong here. A lot of us who are on this awakening, remembering evolution, spiral, whatever it is. I kind of stopped using the spiral because I found out that had to do with ego spiraling, and I don't want you guys' ego spiraling. So we're calling it the evolution now or something. Whatever it is, this dance, this musical, this stage play that we're on. But, a lot of us feel like we don't belong here. And this could be potentially a possible explanation. We've talked about the whole starseed thing quite a few times on this channel. I do believe it's a possibility, but this could potentially be a case for it. And the one thing I will say above this is I have said on previous shows to you before, I don't completely subscribe to every aspect of Gnosticism. I don't think the material world is absolutely evil. I think it's about balance. I think it's about learning and understanding and remembering. Anytime we start to cast things into one box or the other, I think we start to lose sight of it all. So we're going to briefly summarize the underlying model, and then we're going to get into some of the basics. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap over to the canonical version of Genesis. And we're going to kind of do like a little bit of a side-by-side, a play-by-play here on what's going on. So to very briefly summarize that underlying model, God the Father gave rise to a host of spiritual beings, ions, who populated heaven, which the Gnostics called the pleroma, the fullness, including a divine mother and Christ. So real quick, one thing I want to bring up was I was actually talking about this again on Karen's show today. It was a great time. We talked about a lot of cool things. I will post the link once that is ready. The one interesting thing that we did talk about on her show was Arianism. That's right, Arianism. So we were kind of getting into like the Council of Nicaea, and I was trying to kind of just slide in there that it wasn't Nicaea that altered the Bible, but this is what Nicaea did do. Was that it got rid of Arianism, and in the train of thought of Arianism, it was like a very early Christian theology. It was a very early Christian belief system, and it stated that Christ was created in the beginning. So that's one thing that I found was very interesting between this toss-up, is that in the Gnostic creation myth, Christ was created in the beginning, and in Arianism, Christ was created in the beginning. He did not come later on. And that's actually going to end up playing into the rest of this creation myth, and you're going to see why. So one of the last of these beings to emanate from the Father, Sophia, gave birth to a new being on her own, without the involvement of her partner or the approval of the Father. That being born under such circumstances was nothing like the perfect inhabitants of the pleroma. Instead, he was ignorant and malevolent. This was the demiurge, the craftsman, whom the Gnostics identified with the God of the Old Testament. He created the material world to mirror his own wicked personality and trap sparks of divinity, fragments of the pleroma, within humans. It was then up to Christ to awaken humans to their true nature and liberate them from the world. And we see this now in the train of thought that Christ is not going to return as an individual. Call me false light all you want for saying that. I don't care. He's not returning as an individual. He's returning through an energetic way. He's returning from within us. And I mean, we even look to the Bible and we say, the kingdom of God is within you and without you. So if Jesus resides in the kingdom of God, and the kingdom of God is within me and without me, that means that God and Jesus reside within me. I don't see why there's any false light narrative about that. Anyways, back to this. So this is actually, the retelling below follows the version in the Secret Book of John, which is a very interesting book itself, and we will probably have to do a show on that sometime soon, but which is quite representative of the perspective of the classic Gnostic school of thought. The creation stories of the Valentinians, the other early Christian sect or school that can be considered Gnostic, still adhere to the same basic model, although many of the details differ. All right, guys, so we're getting into the nitty-gritty now, and before we start this, we're gonna do some reading on this episode. Don't get me wrong. Like, I try to save you guys on the reading a little bit, and I put all the links for you to do your research, but we're actually getting to some reading and some digesting here for a change, because there's a part in here that I want all of you to see. I've seen another version of this myth. I can't exactly remember where, but there was another individual who had Adam and Eve eat from the tree. But in this version from the Secret Book of John, you're going to be quite surprised on who had Adam and Eve eat from the tree. So in the beginning, there was only the one, the Father, who is illimitable, since there is nothing before it to limit it; unfathomable, since there is nothing before it to fathom it; immeasurable, since there was nothing before it to measure it; invisible, since nothing has seen it; eternal, since it exists eternally; unutterable, since nothing could comprehend to utter it; nameable, since there is nothing before it to give it a name. And that's a pretty powerful verse there, because, and I mean, even just reading that out loud, um, it resonated very deeply with me. So the Father was surrounded by luminous spiritual water. He gazed into the water and saw his reflection. His reflection became Barbelo, the mother, his female counterpart. So one very interesting thing, guys, a little bit of reading material. If you go to the Gospel of Judas, which is a Gnostic gospel, there is a conversation between Judas and Jesus. And I believe, it's been a while since I've read it, but I believe Judas says something along the lines of, "You're not from here. I know where you're from. You're from the immortal realm of Barbelo." And this is what Judas said to Jesus Christ in the Gospel of Judas. I don't remember exactly which verse, but if you'd like to go check it out, it's definitely in there. I can guarantee you that. So, the mother, his female counterpart. Barbelo was also called Pronoia, forethought, because she was the first thought of the Father. Barbelo asked for the Father to grant her foreknowledge, incorruptibility, life eternal, and truth. The Father granted her request. Foreknowledge, incorruptibility, life eternal, and truth came into being and glorified their mother and father. So the one thing I really like about this verse is showing the balance between the energies. This is something I think is a very realistic approach when we're looking at something that we would see as higher dimensional when we're talking about this. It's the fact that they're talking about the balance of the energies. You talk about the mother and the father and the mother. All right, we're not just talking about the Father. We're talking about this balance here. I think that's really key, and I think that ties into a lot of these really, really deep spiritual teachings that a lot of us partake in, and that we read, and that is what we go to when we're looking inward to connect with the divine. So I really dig that, how that lines up there. So just as Barbelo had asked the one to give her new ions, the son asked to be given another, mind. The father and mother agreed. Mind arose and glorified its father and mother. Mind wanted to bring something else into being through the Father's word. Will was born, followed by word. So this is, really breaking down the concepts of human consciousness, man. I think this is really a lot more in depth than the canonical version. The Father made the Son the master of all power and truth. From the Son came the four luminaries, Harmozel, Oroiel, Divithai, and Elileth. Each came into being with three additional ions along with its own. The three ions were with Harmozel were grace, truth, and form. The three with Oroiel were insight. Sorry if I'm butchering that. It's very, very interesting name. Were insight, perception, and memory. The three with Davithai were understanding, love, and idea. The three with Elileth were perfection, peace, and Sophia. Next was the perfect human, Pigoratimus, Adam the stranger, holy Adam, or old Adam. Now, so this is really an interesting concept. I read this over before we were talking about it tonight. So they talk about the old Adam. They talk about the original Adam, and which I find and this kind of lends credence to, and I'm sure Urban's going to love to hear this too if he's checking it out tonight. Lion, thanks for being interactive tonight, man. I appreciate that, dude, a lot. It's cool to see you here. And Urban will appreciate this, but this kind of solidifies that we didn't potentially come from this realm. I don't think humans are originally from here, and this kind of leads into that. So let's kind of get it in. So who came into being and glorified the Father? He was placed in the ion of Harmozel. Adam had a son, Seth, who was placed in the ion of Oroiel. He was set to preside over the souls of the saints, those with Gnosis and the ion of Davithai. The souls of those who were not saints, but who nevertheless repented eventually, were given a place of their own in the Ion of Eleth. So this is very interesting, man. We talk about how the original human form came into a higher dimension. It was not earthbound. So this kind of goes through, Sophia's birth of the demiurge. We'll get into that a little bit, but the real kicker is coming after this. So Sophia watched these marvelous radiant beings all around her. A desire to give birth to an ion of her own arose within her, but she acted on this desire too impatiently and impulsively. She didn't bother to involve her divine partner, nor to obtain the consent of the Father. Since she had descended from the Father, she was full of his tremendous power, and she was able to birth a new being that contained some of her divine essence. But because this new entity had been conceived by Sophia alone, it didn't resemble the other modals. Instead, it was hideous and misshapen. It was like a snake with a lion's head. Its eyes burned like lightning. It was fear and shame. Sophia cast her son out of the divine realm, the Pleroma, in the hope that none of the other inhabitants of that perfect place would see him. To conceal him further, she enveloped him in a shining cloud and placed him on the throne in the middle of it. She named him Yaldabaoth, which probably means child of chaos, and he has since been called Saklas. I guess that was a misspelling because I know it is Saklas the Fool, and Samael. So, that's kind of the backstory of the demiurge, and how that came into being. And you guys know how I feel. I believe that this individual, Yaldabaoth, is the true Satan. This is not Lucifer. This is, and we're going to be talking about Lucifer later. How dare I? But fuck it, we got this. But yeah, I believe this is the true Satan. So let's keep on going here. So Yaldabaoth mated with the mindless within him and generated the 12 archons, demonic beings who would shortly come to rule the earth from the celestial spheres above it. Athoth, Harmoth, Kalila, Omri, Yabel, Adonai, Saboth, Cain, Abel, Abrasine, Yobel, Armopiel, Melchir, Adonan, and Belias. Very interesting names there. Because of Yaldabaoth's foolishness, he was wicked and ignorant of his ancestry. So this is going to kind of go through this a little bit. I'm going to kind of fast forward and speed through it just a little bit. All right, here we go. So essentially what the archons were jealous of humans, and they wanted to have a hand in them. So it's very interesting, this whole thing. So here we go. Meanwhile, Yaldabaoth and his archons saw an image of the heavenly Adam from the Father's pristine realm. They didn't know where it came from, but they were enthralled by it. They decided to attempt to create a human being for themselves, but at first their creation lay lifeless on the ground, and they couldn't figure out how to animate it. As they stood around the immobile body, puzzling over what to do, the gracious beings of the Pleroma came up with a plan to help the part of Sophia that had become trapped in Yaldabaoth return to her so she could return to the Pleroma. So this is kind of maybe the sleight of hand that we're talking about here, that I brought up in my episode with the alchemist. I know this was some kind of choice per se on us, but I believe there was a sleight of hand involved with this. So emissaries from the Pleroma appeared to Yaldabaoth and advised him to breathe his spirit into Adam's face, after which they assured him the body would awaken and stand up. Yaldabaoth did so, and Sophia's power fluttered out of him and into Adam, bringing the first man to life. Because of Sophia's power within him, he was already wiser, more spiritual, and more intelligent than his creators. So this is something we have to kind of see about this, guys. When a lot of people, really look into, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, but to think that they are above us or better than us. And I mean, I believe, dare I say, due to everything, I believe in the Buddhist train of thought. I believe that the gods are not better than humans. They're just a different form of life, and they just have different duties than humans do. So, looking at these beings as higher than us, or as more capable than us or as more intelligent than us is a power grab. It's giving your power away to something outside of you, external. So just think about that as we go on. We are getting to the juicy part. I cannot wait, dude. And so out of jealousy and resentment, the archons made Adam mortal. They placed him in the Garden of Eden, which they filled with all kinds of sumptuous foods to make him attached to material pleasures and distract him from his true divine nature. Okay, so now we're getting to the juicy part. So the Garden of Eden was not to keep us safe, but it was there pumped with foods and material possessions to get us attached to the material realm and forget our divine nature. You know, it's a very different take compared to the canonical Christian text when we're talking about this. Very different take, but it makes a lot of sense. It honestly does, and I'm going to explain why it starts to make sense and who had them eat the tree. I promise this is the last eat from the tree. I promise this is the last time I'm going to say it. We're getting right to it. So. And basically, the archons wanted to possess Adam's divine insight for themselves, so they took it out of Adam and created a new being to house it, Eve. When Adam saw her, he instantly recognized her as his spiritual counterpart. All right, are you guys ready? At Christ's urging, Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge and grew in their understanding and their superiority over their creators. Boom. That is the juiciness, guys. Christ itself, the energy, or it potentially some kind of early version of Christ, was the one who asked Adam and Eve to eat of the tree to gain gnosis. The version that I had originally seen, maybe this was a different version or potentially a different translation. It was an angel, the angel Seraph, that had Adam and Eve eat originally from the tree of knowledge. So I just find this so out of left field, but absolutely so fascinating for the sheer fact that if this is truly a little bit closer to the what could have actually went down as opposed to the canonical Genesis text, then it would make a world of sense for Christ to want Adam and Eve to eat from that tree, because Christ is the liberator of the demiurge. He lived that energy, like oh, Lion, it was Samael. Thanks for that correction, man. I appreciate that. Thank you, man. Yeah, so Samael. And but honestly, like I was saying, I digress. It was it honestly makes a world of sense, because if Christ is the energy that liberates us from the material plane, okay, Christ is the energy that liberates us from the control of the demiurge. I mean, even when we were talking about this, when I had Sarah the Alchemist on, like, this has been kind of a thing when we're talking about this context here. However, what I'm going to say is I find it profoundly, like I was saying, fascinating that Christ itself or himself came and urged Adam and Eve to eat from that tree. And now we can potentially see why the canonical version ended up the way it did. We cannot have Christ telling Adam and Eve to eat from the tree. We have to make it look bad that they ate from the tree. But, like I was saying, again, I wish the episode was out now. When it's out, I'll post it on Karen's. Karen's show. We were talking about this, and it's just so profoundly interesting on how different, but how almost in some ways a little eerily similar to the canonical version this can be. So let's kind of get through it, guys, and then I'm going to do the comparison, and then I'm going to bring up a bigger question. And we're going to dive into that for a little bit. So that's just, just crazy. This is completely against what everybody knows. And this is why I said this might be blasphemous to some people who are watching this, because to know that Christ had Adam and Eve eat from the tree, and to see the whole difference between this story and Genesis is just, yeah, I can see how some people would see it as blasphemous. But look at what Mr. Yaldabaoth did. Now boiling with hatred and envy, Yaldabaoth raped Eve and cast her and her mate out of the garden. 2 sons were born from this tragic intercourse, Cain and Abel, also called Yahweh and Elohim. Very interesting. So now we're having a differentiation between Yahweh and Yaldabaoth in this creation story. A lot of people are on the fence about Yahweh and Yaldabaoth being the same person. But here we have a differentiation. They aren't the same person. However, Yahweh would be the offspring of Yaldabaoth, and Elohim would also be the offspring of Yaldabaoth. Very interesting, because there's a lot of different takes on the Elohim. Some people think they are a benevolent race. Some people think they are not. So just something to think about as we go further. But Adam and Eve had loving consensual sex on their own. The product of their union was an enlightened boy who they named Seth, after the son of the heavenly Adam. Yaldabaoth couldn't bear the fact that there were now 3 beings in his creation who were enlightened and superior to him. He forced Adam and Eve and Seth to drink the water of forgetfulness so they would lose their gnosis. But the capacity to revive gnosis lay dormant within them. Yaldabaoth wasn't capable of expunging it completely, and their spiritual descendants among humankind remain capable of regaining that saving illumination. All they need is a Savior Christ to reveal it to them as he did to their first ancestors. Now, what I'm going to say about that is, you know how I feel about external saviors. We can look at this in the aspect of the Christ energy. That energy, that divine spark within us all, that comes to give us that gnosis, spark that remembrance. That's why I always say on this show, guys, at first you awaken and then you remember. And this is truly what gnosis is, in my opinion, the remembering, not just the awakening. So, guys, that is it for the Gnostic version of that. That is a very interesting version of this story. I have to say, it's something that I profoundly resonated with me. I think it really takes into account the balance of the spiritual energies. It was not all masculine. There was that balance in the beginning, and the separation is what caused that deviation, at least in my train of thought. And I really like how it takes into account a lot of the underlying spiritual principles that are in a lot of the other different texts that we read. And it really kind of sums it up and makes it whole. So I'm not going to go too deep into the canonical version. We're just going to give it a look over. I'm sure a lot of you have read this at least once in your existence, your temporary human ride here on Earth. So we're going to go over it quickly, and then I'm going to ask a very interesting question, and it's something that we need to consider. And yes, it is in the title of this video. So let's bring up the canonical version. We're going to go over it real quick, just for a second. I promise I will not read it all like we did that one. In fact, that one was way cooler than this one, most certainly. So, all right, the story of creation. We know in the beginning, when God created the universe, the earth was formless and desolate. The raging ocean that covered everything was engulfed in total darkness. We know about the creation of day and night. What this lines up to me and what is explaining compared to the Gnostic version, that beginning, when it said it was immeasurable because there was nothing that could be measured before it. It was unutterable because nothing could be uttered before it. This is essentially what I would call their own version of that, when we're kind of looking at this at a side-by-side play. So, they did not talk about the dome, but they did talk about the pleroma and dividing the different realms. They did not talk about really creating the entire earth because that was the job of the demiurge. But, this really kind of makes you think, dude, then God, Demiurge, Yaldabaoth. I know when I had somebody on in a previous show, they were not, they were said that, well, it's not the Old Testament God is not necessarily the Demiurge, it's this expression of God per se. And I can get down on that for the most part. I can see that perspective. However, when we look at, that from the Gnostic version, that the demiurge had a hand in creating the physical realm, the earth, and all the planets, and the demiurge commanded and did all this stiff stuff to Adam and Eve. It just kind of lines up, man. The God, excuse me, the demiurge, whatever it might be. So it's pretty interesting. And then God commanded, let lights appear to the sky. So we have the animal life. And so then God said, and now we will make human beings. They will be like us and resemble us. Okay, so this is kind of, where we really have a huge differentiation in the Gnostic version. The first humans were created in the heavenly realm, and then their image was brought down here into the physical. So it's then, like I was even saying before when I was talking about this, I completely do not think human beings are originally from here. I think we are from other places. We are the aliens. We are what we're looking for. You know what I mean? In that aspect, it's just something I think a lot of people have yet to realize when it comes to this. And that's why I've always said that the human is the ET/angel and the ET/angel is the human. Because I've experienced something like that in my personal experiences. And I do feel that we are not from here. And this kind of just lines it up, when we're comparing these two creation stories. So, they will have power over the fish, birds, animals, large and small. God created human beings, making them to be like himself. But you notice how they said himself here, and they said us here. So this is just the common thing you see in the King James Version or the New Universal Text. They do that, and then they swap it up like that. So other than that, guys, I'm not going to bore you too much with this version. A lot of you have read this pretty much at least once or twice in your spiritual exploration. I do find myself, believe it or not, coming back to the Bible, coming back to the Gnostic scriptures and all that. I make my rotations. Like I said, guys, I'm an omnist. I find the truth in everything. I am not subscribed to just one religion or one spirituality. I'm subscribed to the underlying truth that exists within them all. All right. And I'm sorry for some people, that is just a mind-blowing concept. They can't wrap their heads around it. But all right, guys. So here's a question after reading both the Gnostic version and skimming over the canonical version. We've both seen that quite a few times. So here's my question, and dare I say this question. So this is a very, very, very touchy topic. It's a very, very touchy topic, and I'm just going to leave it at that. And the reason why is because now for a lot of the fundamentalists, we're entering blasphemous territory. Like, oh my God, how in the hell could you say that Jesus and Lucifer are one and the same? Well, remember when we were reading over the Gnostic version of the creation myth, and I said that I believe Yaldabaoth is the true Satan. Okay. Lucifer is not Satan. Okay. Lucifer is an angel of God. Now, mind you, I'm not saying I'm rooting for Lucifer. Okay. I have to be objective in this. And I guess being objective in this is just out of line too, to some people. You know what I mean? Just being objective and trying to lay things down as they are, completely unfathomable to certain people. But, I'm going to do it anyways. But Lucifer is an energy. It's a necessary energy. However, we can't over-embellish ourselves in Lucifer. Lucifer needs to exist for the sheer fact that Not only is he a trier and tester of humanity, we would not ever grow or evolve. He is also a very important part in the makeup of the energetic systems of I believe it's fourth density and fifth density. He has an aspect in that. I'm not sure. I've kind of left a lot of that. I'm not saying I don't still look at it. I mean, I just kind of take things as they are now. I do believe in other densities. I don't know who runs or controls them, though. We'll put it that way. I potentially do, but I can't remember it. So let's dive into something real quick. I got a couple of articles that kind of go over this. I think it's a really interesting read. And you have to think, too, I mean, everything is two sides of the same coin, right? We have to step outside of the dualistic box when we're looking at these spiritual concepts, because everything ultimately services creation, whether it sways in the balance of the light and whether it sways in the balance of the dark. Like I'll bring it up one last time, because I know the people who have been with me throughout the years, they've heard me say this ad nauseum. So this is for some of the newer people here, and this will be the last time, and you'll have to come back and watch this if you're newer after these guys. So we have to understand the importance of balance. How could you truly know and appreciate peace if you've never experienced conflict? How can you truly know and appreciate the good if you've never experienced the evil or the bad? How can you know what you truly want if you've never experienced what you don't want, or what you absolutely don't want? This is the way humans work. We need this balance. We need challenge. We need growth. That's how humans work. And that's why, when we look at the aspects of Christ and we look at the aspect of Lucifer, they both trigger growth, which I find very interesting. Whether the aspect of Lucifer triggers the growth through challenges and testing, and whether Christ triggers growth within us through these realizations. But essentially, you can say they're one and the same. The realizations and the growth are almost like an Ouroboros between this. And that's just one thing I think is absolutely a very interesting thing, because through the tests and the challenges, we liberate ourselves through gnosis. So would it not make sense that they are essentially the middle path? Exactly. Thank you, Lion. I appreciate you being here tonight, man. I wish you were here more often. So let's get into this, man. And I know Don and Spinja are watching too. I'm going to give a shout out to those two. I will be hopping on Spinja's show next weekend. Looking forward to that. I'm sorry I'm not on the Rumble chat, you guys, but no, I know you're here, and I really appreciate that you're here. Thank you for being here, you two. So why are both Jesus and Satan referred to as the morning star? The alternative is to be like Satan, a fallen star. Jesus is the morning star, but not a star that comes and goes according to the cycle of a day. Man, is it really going to do this to me? I can't read the whole thing. This one I did not read. Okay, but his star will be immovable, immutable center of our lives. Let's kind of dive into this further. And if I can't read the whole thing on this, we'll swap to another one. There you go. How you are fallen from heaven, O day star, son of dawn. How you are cut down to the ground, you who laid the nations low. Isaiah 14:12. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify to you about these things for the churches. I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star. So it is kind of interesting, guys. And the Catholics, believe it or not, in a lot of their masses, refer to Lucifer and the morning star quite a bit. So I find it interesting, guys. We got this correlation here. This correlation exists, that Jesus is the morning star and that Lucifer is also the morning star. So we have to take this into account. Very interesting. There's that correlation there. So it would not be there for no reason, at least in my opinion. So we have the prophetic word made more sure. to which you do well to pay attention as to a lamp shining in a dark place, until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your hearts. 2 stars, one still shining, one fallen. This is the picture of Jesus versus Satan. Satan was a star, but his light has been extinguished. Jesus is the star. Although he was killed, he rose again and resumed his place in the heavens. His light was extinguished for a short season, but ultimately could not be put out. So it's a very interesting comparison there as well. So what is the imagery of the morning star? Many of the descriptors which give us a picture of Christ reflect our limited imaginations and are given to us because we understand them. They relate to the world as we know it because we cannot comprehend God fully. Can you discover the depths of God? Can you discover the limits of the Almighty? Asked Job. Imagery helps us to visualize the invisible spiritual battle. So very interesting, man. Again, they are very, very similar. You know, like I said, there's that Ouroboros there that exists of the growth when it comes to this, because the Lucifer energy causes growth and the Christ energy causes growth, and it's almost a reciprocating growth. So and this part is a little juicy, and then we're gonna hop into the next one, and then we're gonna wind down for the night. So let's get back to it. So this is really funny. I just saw this before we swapped over, but it says, according to Randy Alcorn in his article, "Why is Jesus called the Morning Star?" Some readers take offense at both Jesus and Satan being referred to using the same imagery. But lo and behold, for us, consider the testing of Jesus in the wilderness. Yeah, exactly, Lion. Exactly. No, 100%, 100%. It is. And this is one thing that I'm trying to bring to the table with this. It's that balance, it's that understanding, it's looking at this from a non-dualistic, non-fundamentalist standpoint. It's trying to be objective of this, you know, and it gets people so up in arms, it gets people so crazy when you bring up this topic. And I think that's just a really huge fundamentalist mindset when we're talking about this. You know, we have to understand that we have to step outside of the dualistic box when we're talking about topics. But I do find it funny, you know, that it's they to suggest in any way are similar is unnatural. But Alcorn is quoting scripture, God's inspired word on the matter, or though again, is it the church's? Is it the church's opinion, or is it his? Remember, guys, we only have one authority, and it's not the church. It is the Heavenly Father. And I'm going to leave it at that. So, how the name Morning Star shows contrast. Scripture frequently reinforces a point using contrast. Satan tried to tempt Jesus to eat. There we go. That was what Lion was saying there, but they're calling it Satan. In the desert, the angel had to test him. So there we go. We're kind of lining it up there with that. And so Satan tried to tempt Jesus to eat, to test the Lord, and to rebel against the Lord as Satan had done. Satan implied a lie that he could grant power to Jesus, but Jesus used God's truth as his defense against temptation. It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. So again, they're doing the contrast between these two characters, but, you know, we have to think. And this is actually the next one I wanted to bring up real quick. So we got celestial imagery is another facet of juxtaposition within the Bible. Satan had the potential to be a servant angel, to remain in the presence of God, not in power, but in relationship. He could have reflected God's light to Adam and Eve, their offspring. So now we're kind of really getting into that canonical category with this. So we're going to go ahead and swap to the next one. But guys, like, this is, I mean, it's a controversial topic when you try to do a comparison of this and you try to do this from an objective point of view. It ultimately ruffles the jammies and the feathers of everybody. It's like, dude, are we not allowed to discuss and expand upon these ideas? Is that it's like, this is what I mean, guys. Like, we're not, everything that just seems like common sense is unfathomable. to most. And I'm going to leave it at that for some fucking reason. So let's get into the next article on this, and then we're going to wind down for the night. This one was the one that I actually had time to read, and I want to share with you guys. So, are Jesus and Lucifer the same being? Something we're kind of starting to get a grasp of. This could be a very real thing. Although it is controversial to compare Jesus with Lucifer, there are several mythological and linguistic consistencies between these two supernatural entities that deserve our attention. Well, I mean, we just talked about linguistic, how they're both called the morning star. I mean, that's a pretty interesting consistency right there. And this is the thing, guys. These books were not written in what I would say, I guess for a lack of better words, a bullshit manner. There was thought put into every single verse. There was thought put into every single word. So the fact that we see Jesus and Lucifer both referred to as the morning star, that should be taken seriously, and that should be taken into account, because we know these books were written seriously. They were not written in a bullshit manner. They were not written in a joking manner, but that's something we need to consider as we kind of move forward with this. So accordingly, Christians and practitioners of other Judeo-Christian faiths should be warned that this article may not make for comfortable reading. I know it's not. Trust me. Wait till we get into this. And so Jesus and Lucifer, a single being. The origin of the Lucifer myth. Lucifer is usually described as a fallen angel, and the Judeo-Christian narrative of an angel falling from heaven probably has its origins in the Babylonian myth of Etana. The ancient king strove to be higher than the supreme god, Anu, by riding on the wings of an eagle. However, he was filled with fear and forced to return to earth. Very interesting. Alternatively, the fallen angel myth may refer to Inanna's descent into the underworld. Like Lucifer, Inanna is associated with Venus in Babylonian mythology. Indeed, many Old Testament myths originated in the Babylonian Sumerian religion, including Noah's Ark. Yes, he was called Ziusudra I believe, in the Sumerian version of the Noah's Ark story, and he was the son of Enki, one of the gods. So, again, we have a very interesting correlation between the canonical Genesis text and the Enuma Elish from Sumeria. This is something I've talked about quite a lot throughout the years, and again, you ruffle some jammies and you ruffle some feathers when you bring up this comparison. It's really, I guess, unfathomable for people to understand that this book existed 6,000 years before the Old Testament did. So, because, the Earth's only 6,000 years old, I guess. I don't know. Or I don't know. Some people think that. We'll see. So, very interesting in the comparison with Noah's Ark. So the morning star, Lucifer, Jesus, we talked about that. Lucifer is called Hallel, meaning the shining one. Furthermore, a direct translation of Lucifer from Latin into English gives us the phrase light bearer or light bringer. The notion of light bringing is a reference to Lucifer's depiction as the planet Venus, the second brightest object in the night sky after the moon, as Venus is often visible shortly before dawn. So, they're just kind of going through these comparisons of the symbolism when it comes to Lucifer. So rather than being a prince of darkness, Lucifer appears to have a brighter and more reputable origins. And I'm not saying, guys, let me just, again, I will emphasize, Lucifer is a necessary energy, but we do not over embellish ourselves in that energy. I've been using this analogy to kind of describe it. So when we're dealing with the Lucifer energy, you can take a plane trip there, come back, or take a road trip there, come back, but you don't want to buy a house there. You don't want to, or buy a condo, or potentially put up a homestead in the Lucifer energy. You don't want to do that, because if it becomes too unbalanced, there's a lot of nasty things that start to arise within us. We start to neglect our humanity. amongst other things. So if we want to do a episode on the negative aspects of Lucifer energy, hit me up and let me know if you would like to see that. I could definitely go on and on for that, because a lot of the New Age movement, like the hardcore New Age movement, is knee deep, or I should say balls deep, in Lucifer energy, and that's where you don't want to be. So let's kind of get back to the article. So indeed, popular myths about Lucifer describe him as an angel who was the cast out of heaven. How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn, you have been cast down to the earth. You once laid low the nations. It should be noted that the King James Bible replaces morning star, son of dawn with Lucifer, O son of the morning. That's because they couldn't have two morning stars. People would notice that and they would start asking questions. Anything to derail you figuring something out. Anything to derail you figuring something out. And this is why, if you have a King James version, you need to throw it the fuck out and get yourself a Geneva text, an interlinear, or in a pre-Nicene New Testament to see things for how they really are. So let's get kind of finished with this, and then we're going to wind down. I am hitting the hour mark here. So, despite the protests of some biblical scholars, earlier translations showed the two descriptions to be interchangeable, with the quoted passage appearing to compare to the fall of Lucifer with that of King Etana. But see, this is what I'm saying. Biblical scholars didn't want this to happen either. So that just kind of makes you think of, I mean, dude, why not just be honest about this? Why try to change it? Oh, because we want to control people with it. So, anywho, the two figures comparative mythology, we're using the above quotes. One could suggest that Lucifer and Jesus are the same entity. A further connection can be made if we consider their comparative mythologies. As described earlier, Lucifer was thrown out of heaven. He was not technically thrown out of heaven. That's going based on that book. I got to remember the name of that book. If you remember the name of that book, somebody, please give it to me. I think it was written in the early 1940s, but it talks about that, how Lucifer rebelled in heaven and he was cast down to earth. This is not, I don't think this is canonical, if I'm correct. I'm not exactly sure. So let's get back to this. Anyway, and the great dragon was thrown down, the ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown to the earth and his angels were thrown down with him. I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Christian tradition tells us Lucifer became Satan after his fall. Jesus also descended from heaven to walk the earth. Nevertheless, Jesus also descended from heaven to walk the earth and be a God among men. So that's the other thing too, we have to take into consideration. I could see a Paradise Lost. Yes. Oh, dude, you are the man. You need to come on one night and we need to chat it up, dude. Seriously, if you're available. We will talk about whatever. Thank you for that. Paradise Lost. Exactly. It was on the tip of my tongue. But I digress. Back to this. As I was saying, people can argue that, well, Jesus's purpose was different than Lucifer's, but was it really? I mean, Jesus tested his disciples all of the time. And oh yes, you're coming on. We will chat, sir. Freaking Jesus tested his disciples all the time. In fact, in the Gospel of Thomas, I remember that he walked in on them praying and he started laughing at them. And I don't remember exactly. This is why I do need to brush up on my Gnostic Gospels again. It's been quite some time. But I know Jesus was laughing at them. And I believe this is where he said, it's not what goes in your mouth that defiles you, or what comes out of your mouth. Or he said a particular statement to the what you would call the original 12 disciples. None of his other disciples were there. So Jesus also tested people 100%. Jesus was not just this. He was a rebel. You know what I mean? He was a lot like us, guys. And that's one thing I think a lot of people are too I don't know for what reason to admit. People like you and I, us on the awakening remembering journey, Jesus was very much like us, at least in my opinion. He did no harm but took no shit. And we can see that he wouldn't go in and flip tables and flog bankers if he was a pacifist. Like he would not. He did no harm but took no shit. So, I mean, we all are on that spiritual way. We're all on that spiritual, evolution, but that's a lot of our mottos. Do no harm, take no shit. So, like, I definitely feel that this is a great comparison, man. I do think that this could potentially be it. All right, guys, I'm going to wind down for tonight. I'm going to sum up everything that we kind of just talked about. I want to thank all of you for being here. There's a lot of extra people. Again, the Lion, so cool to see you here. Papal Black Nobility, Don and Spinja, Karen, if you're watching too. I want to thank all of you for being here. It's awesome to see you guys here tonight. You guys interacted. It was a great show. I'm happy for it. I had to start off with what I had to start off with, though, because although I carry myself a certain way, guys. I got class. I'm not here talking shit about nobody. I'm not here making you feel bad for that's not my style. I'm too old for that shit. Even though I'm only 36, I'm too old for that shit. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not here bad mouthing nobody. I'm not here talking shit about anybody. All right. I'm here just doing this with you guys. We're learning together. You know what I mean? And I think, I'm going to face adversity in this game, most certainly. I mean, when you have somebody delivering solutions as opposed to just bitching and moaning about the problems and yelling into an echo chamber, you're probably going to get some side eye. You got somebody who's trying to unify everybody outside of a government under our own will to unify and to set aside our own petty differences and for the greater common thing we're going through right now. And then after we're done getting through this, we can go back to arguing about what shape the earth is and whether or not Epstein killed himself. I mean, really, at this point, it's not me. And I'm going to say this, guys, and I know there's a lot of really down home, true human beings in this spiritual awakening and conspiracy community. I know there's a lot of true down home human beings. Like I've talked with quite a few of you. You guys are real. You're awesome. And thank you for being you, like straight up. But a lot of people in this community, man, they still got a lot of healing to do. They still got a lot of healing to do, man. And the best thing I can say for them is work on that healing, guys, because you're not doing any of us, you're doing all of us a disservice, and you're doing yourself a disservice by not working on that and by bypassing that. And you're going to hold down our collective energy. So I think it's best just to be honest with yourselves. I'm honest with myself on a day-to-day, hour by hour, sometimes minute by minute basis. I have to be. So nonetheless, that's that. Let's summarize what we talked about. The Gnostic creation myth is a very interesting one. I think it takes into account a lot of the underlying core spiritual principles that we look at in other spiritual books and philosophies. I mean, the balance of the energies, okay, how humans are divine. Okay, we have a divine nature. Okay, we talk about the creation of this matrix reality, this physical reality that we currently live in. All right, I think there's a lot of fine details. And yes, Christ had Adam and Eve eat from the tree. That blew me away. I mean, even like as the Lion was saying, it was Samael who had him do it, but in the other Gnostic version, but Christ having them eat from the tree. I mean, when you really think about it, it kind of makes a world of sense. I mean, if the demiurge brought us here, captured us here, it would make sense that Christ would have or brought our image here from the divine realms with the archons to create a physical human. It would not be out of the realm of possibility that Christ would have Adam and Eve eat that fruit to help them achieve gnosis, to reignite that divine spark with them and help them get back to where they need to be. As far as the canonical Genesis, I think there is a lot left out and there's a lot of indiscrepancies. I mean, I even pointed out the indiscrepancy, and I believe it was verse 5. Let me check real quick here. It was not verse 5. It was verse 26 in Genesis. that it says God made, let's make them in our image or make them look like us, and then 3 sentences later made them look like him. So we know about the Elohim, that is a plural that originally existed there, that either got changed out purposefully or impurposefully, who knows, or not on purpose, who knows. But I do think that there is more to collect. Esoteric studies. All right, David, thanks for that, man. Hell yeah. And I think when we look at the Gnostic version, I think we have a lot more to look at. And as far as my what I will say is, the synopsis on is Jesus and Lucifer one and the same. It could very well be the case, guys. We talk about polarities. Okay. Everything is essentially a neutral energy. It's the perspective of its polarity. So when we look at what I was talking about earlier on how Jesus and Lucifer is the tester of humanity and challenges humanity, and that in itself can cause gnosis, okay, through those tests and those challenges. Okay. And then when one achieves gnosis, you have Christ there on that end. It's almost a reciprocating relationship, is the way it should be looked at. Maybe if they're not one in the same. Okay. Let's say they're not one in the same and they have similarities. Okay. But they have similarities. Could it not be a reciprocating relationship? Because like I was saying in the beginning, guys, everything ultimately services creation. Everything. It doesn't matter if it sways in the balance of the light or it sways in the balance of the dark. Everything ultimately services creation. So the idea or the thought that they would have a reciprocating relationship of some kind is not out of the realm of possibility when we're talking about spiritual topic matter. It's not. It could very well be a thing. So I want you all to think about that and digest that for the rest of the night. I got to head off of here, guys. I got some dinner to eat. Next week, I'm going to get on the horn with Mr. Josh Urban, who was on the show when we were talking about the mind virus. And I'm potentially Nerd in Charge if she can make it as well. And we're going to kind of be breaking down the GATE program. And the gifted program and a lot of the different CIA stuff that kind of came along with it. And the Lion, hit me up when we get off here. If you are good to go the week after that, man, I would love to have you on. I saw you said, let's do it. And I know I got to have Don and Spinja on very soon too. We will chat about that Sunday when I'm on your show, Spinja. We'll figure out what's going on then. Other than that, guys, you have a wonderful evening. Thank you all again for joining me for another BG-Cast Wednesday live podcast. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care, guys. Have a good one. And I will not be as raw next time, but if you'd like to see me like this a little bit more, let me know. Have a good one, guys.